Well, Newsline continues. On Thursday, President William Ruto addressed the nation from Embu, and he was making several promises and also looking back at what his government is doing and what it's putting in place for the development of the country. One of the things that he mentioned was that come September, the country will be making a bigger switch towards electric mobility. And particularly he's saying that he had good news for Bodaboda riders across the country, one of them being the person who seconded him when he was presenting his papers to the IEBC. And he's saying that Bodaboda man should know that come September, he should be able to switch over into electric Bodabodas. Now, the reaction across the country was huge. We'll talk about the reaction shortly, but first look at what the president said on Thursday.
I have some good news for my Bodaboda friends. When I went around the country, they stepped forward and they told me they are victims of an exploitative financing system. I want to tell them, my good friends, I have some good news for you. We are developing, and by September this year, we will have a mechanism where you can get your Bodaboda that does not need petrol, that will be run on electricity, one that is financed by not a predatory system, but one that respects the interests of those who purchase the Bodabodas.
Well, that's some good news, of course, if you think about what the president was saying. But now, the reaction from the public was one of disbelief. What do you mean, electric Bodabodas? By September of this year? Like, really, are you serious? Now, let's talk about that reality. I'm joined by three guests for this conversation. One of them is Ken Onyango. Ken is the Secretary General of the Bodaboda Association of Kenya. And we also have Moses Nerito, who is a founder member of the Electric Mobility Association of Kenya and also an official of Basigo, which are electric buses that are already on the roads, and Caroline Garariga, who is a Bodaboda rider. And she's here with her bike, which is an electric bike. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So first, the good thing is that we at least have a bike here that we can see this is a real bike and everything, and you'll be taking us through this particular bike, Caroline. But let's start with that. This is an electric bike.
Yes.
And you're already using it on Kenyan roads.
Yes.
For how long have you had this bike?
I have used it for an year now. I started using it last year. So I haven't been so long because the company said about a bit late last year, so that's when I got it. I was among the first people to get it.
What do you do for a job, Caroline?
I am a delivery rider. I work for an online delivery app, that is Carrefour, if I may. Yeah, that is my day job.
That's what you do on a daily basis?
Yes, that is my main source of income.
And you said that you've been using an electric bike for the last 1 year?
Yeah.
How did you get your hands on this bike?
I had a friend of mine who introduced me to the bike. Actually, I was not going to pick the electric bike. I was going to go and take the petrol bike. Someone told me before I went there that there's a new version of bikes that is coming through. It's an electric bike, does not use fuel at all. It's very economical, and I was like, so why not? I went and picked the bike and I started using it. I've never used the petrol one before.
There are very many questions, of course, that I'm going to ask.
Yeah. From
how do you charge this thing? How long does the battery run? Does it use small pin charger? Or does it use Type C? You know, all those kind of questions. But just keep it here for that.
Yeah, okay.
Moses, you've been on the electric mobility conversation as well for a while. Yeah. First, you've got the buses that are already on the roads. First of all, introduce us to those buses and what exactly you're doing.
So thank you, Latif. Yes, as I said, my day job, I sell buses. And what we are doing at Basigo is to ensure we're actually making it possible for public service operators, or what we call matatu operators or SACCOs, to be able to acquire electric buses. So what we are bringing those electric buses, we have 19 currently, which are all plying in different roads with 6 different SACCOs. And currently, we are now in the next phase. We are now going to start doing local production, so that these buses are actually, instead of being a novelty, they are an everyday thing. So we've been running for the last maybe around 15 months. The first 12 months was in trial. Like any good product, put it out in the market, do a pilot, see if it's fit for purpose. make changes, and that's what we've been doing. But now we're in the phase where we need to go full commercial, and that's where we're going, and that's why the conversation about e-mobility is exciting for me, because we are part of that whole value chain that is actually going to go commercial very soon.
When we say electric, what exactly do we mean?
Basically, for the last 150 years, most vehicles have been propelled by fuels, or fossil fuels, either diesel or gasoline, as they call it. So on electric, what you're doing is the vehicle is propelled by energy stored in a battery, and that energy is put into a motor, and the motor then propels the vehicle. So you're not using any fuel; you're just actually using electricity. Yeah.
So it's a battery.
It's a battery.
A DC battery.
Yes, it's a DC battery.
So it's just the same way very many homes across the country, when they started having TVs and there was no power coming to the homes, they'd have the battery, which they go and charge and then bring back home.
So the closest we say is solar batteries.
Okay.
So you've got solar panels in your house, you've got an inverter, and that inverter then converts that energy and stores it in a lithium-ion battery. So what is on this bike is a lithium-ion battery. Yeah. Of course, there are different configurations depending on how you want that battery to give you the power. Do you want a lot of power all at once, or do you want a trickle of the power? So there are different ways. So you will not take a solar battery and put it on the bike, because it will not give you the power you require on the bike. But however, the bike battery at end of life can be used for a home for a solar battery, because what you require at home is a lower density of power. Here you require high density of power. Yeah. Now on the bus the bus you're talking about, the batteries could be a few tons. Yeah, so we've got, like on our buses, we've got 7 modules of batteries, which are placed in different places. So in this one, you can see the yellow box here. That's actually the battery on this particular motorcycle.
On the buses, how do you charge the batteries?
So we've got charging stations. We charge them. We start charging at around 10:30 to 11 o'clock at night, because the bus is operating mainly almost 18 hours a day. So we've got a charging station up the road, just here on North Airport Road. We have another one. We just opened a big depot in Buruburu, and we have another one in Kikuyu, and we are looking to open more in the Eastlands area, and also towards Thika Road and towards Ngong Road. Yeah, so that's how you charge.
How many hours to charge one bus?
If you do slow charging, which is more preferable, because you want to protect the battery life, it takes around, assuming you're then charging from almost zero, it will take you around 4 hours. But if you do a fast charge, which the charging machine allows you to do that, it'll take you 2 hours. But we prefer to, like overnight, then you once the vehicle comes in at around 11, then you've got the time to be able to do 4 hours and into the morning, and by 5 a.m. the bus is ready to leave.
And will it run until 11 the following day?
So it will run until 11, depending on the route. If it's a very long route, it may require a top-up in the day. So what we do is we do what we call an opportunistic charging. So when the driver during off-peak, and that same day would do during off-peak, when you're not very busy, pop in, do a top-up charge, maybe 20-30%, and that gives you more range, and that gives you a bit more, it reduces the range and anxiety and gives you a bit more range, a bit more peace of mind. And as long as, just like your phone, if you keep draining your phone every day to zero, and then you're powering it up from zero, then your battery life reduces. But if you then keep if you keep it at least not below 20%, you actually increase the battery life. Yeah.
So do you do the same, Caroline? Like, how do you charge your bike?
Well, for the bike, there are different substations around the country. Not the country, Nairobi, to be specific, because they just began the company.
Swap stations?
Yes, there are there are about 9 in Nairobi. So what we do is, when the battery life is about to go down, you go and take it to the swap station. They do a battery swap, and then you can it takes like about 2 minutes, and you are out of there.
What does that mean, a battery swap?
They remove the battery and put another battery that has full charge. That is
so you remove the battery that you've come with.
Yeah.
But you leave it there.
Yes.
They fix another battery for you. You go.
Yes. You leave that one charging with them.
So you must have 2 batteries at any one time.
No, you don't have to have 2 batteries. The company has a number of batteries which they offer to the riders, so you don't actually get to own the battery 100%.
Okay.
That is why when you take it to the swap station, you get another one. A different rider will come, will get yours was full, and will be given that battery.
Okay. Let's come to you now, Ken. Ken, you're Secretary General of the Bodaboda Association. which I assume is an umbrella body of the various Bodaboda circles and groupings, right?
Yeah.
Are there many members of your association who have made the switch, or at least even started with electric bikes? Or is this a foreign conversation?
Many of our members have not really switched to the electric bike. The reason is because, Eric, most of our Bodaboda riders are people that are depending so much on even the bikes that they are using, the petrol bikes. Currently, the price of those bikes are very, very expensive. You buy a bike, if you want to buy a petrol bike right now, it's around 150, 160,000 shillings, going by the kind of taxation that has also targeted that industry. Now, most of the riders, the much they can actually accumulate really to access a new bike is actually through the loan that they take from these different creditors in the market. And those creditors, most of them are charging around 15,000 or 20,000 as a deposit, then you get a bike. So when you go there and you find a bike, if you buy at a cash price, 150, 160,000, if you go through the loan process, it's double that amount. So mostly it goes up to 300 to 320,000. If you are going to pay pole 400 shillings daily for a period of 2 years. If you want to pay for 1 year, they actually give you an offer of paying 600, which means you're going to work double from 6 in the morning and maybe up to around 10 p.m. at night, so that you can manage to pay that 600 fuel and at least go with something at home. Now, when you come to this bike, and Mr. Nderitu is here, is going to tell us the price of this bike, most of the riders may not even be ready to buy this bike.
Why?
Cash. They will have to go through the process of buying it through a loan process. Now, if you are being told the price of this bike today is maybe 200,000 or maybe 250,000, I don't know. She's jealous. If it's 200,000,
The last one, what was your initial cost of acquiring the bike?
No, I didn't take mine in cash form. Like he said, it's so much not affordable, especially when with this economy, you need a job. So I took mine via a loan. Deposit is only 15,000 Kenya shillings.
Just like the others?
Yes, just like the others. We pay weekly, and when you compare with the petrol bikes, it's almost comparable. It's almost the same price. Although now mine, I spend less money considering I'm not using fuel. So weekly you get to pay, depending on the amount of time you're going to pay for the bike. We don't all pay the same. So I can tell you an example of 1.5 years. Probably you're paying for 1.5 years, you get to pay 3,463 per week. You divide that by 7 days, that's 494 shillings per day, which is very affordable, considering the bike charges only 180 shillings. Yeah.
So if you compare the prices then, Ken?
now when you compare the price, it is not only about the price, because she has not told us at the end of the day if she went to buy this bike on a cash price is how much. Now when you spread it, you want to know at the end of the day, if I'm buying the petrol bike at the end of the repayment period, 320,000, for the electric is going to be how much? Maybe it's going to be double, because it's also reducing on the part of the petrol that's now skyrocketed, is on the top of the roof. The electric one maybe it's going to be more affordable, but I have this fear, Latif. The infrastructure for the electric bike, I don't think it has spread all over, because you've just heard her saying 9.
The substations are within Nairobi.
Within Nairobi.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, for instance, today I just get a customer, and most of our riders are not like Matatus who have specific routes. Bodaboda are actually operating in all the routes. If a customer comes today and say, nataka unipeleke airport, you're going to go to airport.
Well, a battery got 20%, my friends.
Yes, like for instance, you actually made a lot of trips within the CBD, for instance. 2-3 trips, battery has depleted a bit, and then a client just comes immediately and tells you, I have a very quick delivery that I want you to do immediately to Thika, and come back. A kilometer from town to Thika is 45 kilometer. 45 km to Thika, when you to and fro, it's going to be 90 kilometer. If you had covered 40 kilometer within town, and for instance, this bike maybe covers 100 kilometer for each bit, it completely depletes. If it ends at Kenyatta University, what should I do the next? If there is no swap station within that very...
You see, that's now where you're, that's where you're getting it wrong. And as she'll tell you, she does this for, so I'll not speak for her. Now, what do you guys, how do you guys ride today? The moment I give you, even if I jump on a border, the first place you go is where?
Petrol station.
Uneka Kafinji. True or false?
True.
Now, what is she saying? They are putting these charging points. Already, the companies of the bike that she's got are 9. There are other companies that are also doing the same. So if you've got, and they will keep growing. And the reason we are then pushing for this incentive, why we are lauding the president for what he said, is so that those charging points are everywhere. For example, you're in CBD. Mombasa Road, there's one in Gara, there's in Hurlingham. There are several, and they're growing by the day. And sooner or later, as these incentives come in, then we will have investors putting them in Thika, putting them in, now going to the counties. So that's how, like even telephony. There was a time you could not make a call if you were driving and you crossed one neighborhood to the other, it would drop. So the infrastructure is growing, but you deliver every day. Have you run out of charge?
No. Not
see, how far do you go? Do you ever go to Thika?
Yes. No, actually my job, we don't go all the way to Thika. The farthest we can go is Ruiru, but I have gone to Thika and it can take you to Thika and back actually within there's a charging station in Thika Road. That was to answer your question. Just opposite.
No, the reason why, Latif, I'm telling you about the issue of charging is because of one thing. Especially, most of the Bodaboda riders are coming from Kisii, Kisumu, Kakamega. When you buy a bike, it is your vehicle. During December, when they hike the prices of
so we now we're going to buy the car because I'll use it once a year to go to Dala.
That is the mentality of most of the bikers.
It's an asset.
It's an asset.
It should work for you.
It should work for me.
Okay.
That I should not look for another alternative when it reaches December. And the prices at country bus, they're charging 3,000, 3,500, going all the way to Kisumu. And I have my bike, so I should park it and go and line up with the other passengers at country bus. I need something that is going to serve me full time without any other excuses.
So let me give you a solution for that.
Just a
Move
minute.
to electric, make more money, and in December you can fly. She can tell you how much she's telling you. She can tell you the economics of how much she's making a day.
But I will tell you one thing, Latif. Having said that, it does not mean this initiative is a bad thing. It is something that we seriously would love to embrace so that it can actually work for us. Remember, one thing that the president talked about during his campaigns, he said, kazi ni kazi, pesa mfukoni. And we are reminding the president the other day, we have not seen that pesa mfukoni. We have only seen kazi ni kazi, but we are not seeing money. The government is taking all the money that we are really making and taxing us left, right, and center. Now, if the president is saying this time round, from what he was saying during Madaraka celebration, that is now going to remember the Bodaboda guys that actually worked very tirelessly for him by bringing an electric bike, the president will escalate completely all over the infrastructure for this electric so that it can actually serve every single Bodaboda rider in this country.
Okay.
Because it is going to be a game changer for our sector. Because right now, an electric, petrol, most of the petrol stations are selling fuel at around 182 shillings.
Within Nairobi, and it's a viral.
I think in another 1 week, if they pass this finance bill, it's going to hike up to 210. My brother, you will be killing the Bodaboda industry completely. Now, every one of us want to rush to the electric bike. The demand that is going to go for the electric bike is going to be double. Are they in a position really to supply the demand that's going to come?
So what I hear as
point
what you see as the Bodaboda industry, the barriers to entry are number one, infrastructure.
Yes.
Right? That supports this, that you want to have, more charging stations across the country. And this should be industry driven, not necessarily government setting up charging stations, right? And what the president talked about was the barrier, which was the cost issue. And the president's statement was specifically talking about a financing model that makes it easier for you to afford. You know, the first thing that you talked about was the price and everything and how costly it's going to be. Addressing the barrier of the costs of acquisition or the cost of switching to this. Now, what does that mean, Moses? Because you've been advocating for this for a while. What does that mean in terms of just making it more affordable or easier to acquire?
Currently, the most expensive part of the bike is the battery, almost between 40 and 50%. And the reason why, and when we had the roundtable with the governors and industry and industry leaders, why we were advocating for a reduction of duty in lithium-ion batteries is because the battery is really expensive. We at the moment do not have the capacity or the know-how to actually make these batteries here. However, there is a big push to actually start assembling those batteries here. So if that was possible, same as solar, because a solar battery does not attract the 25% duty and even excise. So if we then got that, what that would mean is this bike would even become more affordable for the to be actually almost comparable, if not cheaper. Now, how are these the people doing motorcycles making it possible, even as we're doing buses, to be able for a rider to afford this? When you remove the battery, you're basically leasing the battery. So you own the bike, but you lease the battery. That means you're able to bring down the cost. Now, once we start, there's a critical mass. As he says, there will be more assembly locally. Then economies of scale will actually bring the price down. You then remove the duty on those batteries, and we start even the value chain coming here. So you assembly the batteries locally. That brings it even more, brings it down. Now, that opens another opportunity for investors to be able to put charging stations. What do you require as a charging station? You require some space, you require good power, and must be within the ecosystem or within the roads where the people are operating, and that will be liberalized. So if somebody is looking to be able to set up in Nakuru and they come to one of either to even to us as AMAC and ask, we are looking to set up in Nakuru, we then will introduce you to these other motorcycle companies that are looking to expand. Right now it's a Nairobi affair, unfortunately, but why it's a Nairobi affair is because this is where you do your trials. All these companies are actually, there are around 10 companies that are ready to scale. They've done their trials. They've got good products in motorcycles that can actually do the job even in the rural areas. All they require is those entry barriers. Now, on the financing side, there's a lot of financing going around, but maybe the details of how we will bring down that financing need to be thrashed out. But of course it's welcome, whether it's through the Hustler Fund that will be able to, you can actually be able to buy a bike. That's what I assumed, but we will see that and how to finance it. But again, I go back to Caroline. She's financing, she's riding the bike. She can tell you the economics for her as a person.
But then, Caroline, unfortunately, we can't compare because you didn't switch from the fossil fuel Bodaboda to an electric fuel Bodaboda. But of course, you speak to other people who are riding and they're using, you compare. So give us that comparison. So, where are the advantages?
Okay, yeah, I do work with, actually most of the people that I work with use petrol Bodaboda, and I can tell you for sure, most of them want my bike because the economic difference is very wide. For example, like I said, for the battery, when it's at 0%, you only pay 180 shillings for a full charge to 100%. And that takes you for about 80 to 100 kilometers, depending on the speed and the amount of goods you're carrying. But you see, for the same amount of money, that 180 shillings takes me throughout the day for my deliveries. I don't charge my bike twice a day. I only charge it once a day. 180 shillings. Which is usually very rare for me to use 180 shillings because it doesn't go all the way to 0%. When it has a bit of charge...
Like a liter of fuel?
Yes.
Like a liter of petrol?
Yes, exactly.
For an entire day?
Entire day, yeah. Okay. And I don't actually pay 180 all the time because if it has a little charge, the price reduces. For example, 50% is 90 shillings, half the price. And you can charge it when it's at 50%. So comparing it to a Bodaboda rider with a petrol bike, the same amount of that 180 shillings they spend, most of them, when we have communicated, spend about 600 shillings during the whole day's deliveries, and I've only spent 180 shillings. That's a very, very wide gap.
So on fuel alone, on what is powering your bike,
Yes.
the petrol guys will spend about 600 bob in a day.
Yes, yes,
The electric will cost you 118 a day.
yes.
Okay. And you're charging the same, of course, to your fares.
The same thing, yeah. So I get to keep more profit.
There's actually a...
There's actually a
I
very
think I rest my case.
Hapo Ken, hapo wenyewe.
But Eric, that's the same phenomenon we are seeing on the buses. It's the same story. Because what does it, how much energy does a bus take the whole day? If you compare to how much they would put diesel, and diesel we know is going to go up. Yeah. Now, what's the next step that the companies that are actually putting these charging stations start taking advantage of what they are calling the time of use in the EV tariff? We've just got an EV tariff with the time of use, which says if you are then charging, and now after 10 p.m., you are then paying 8 shillings per kilowatt hour, as opposed to 16, 17 in the day. Now that's
So Kenya Power gives you a different tariff.
A different tariff. Okay. So you will find that the guys who are doing this charging station will start now migrating. And why is that important? Because these bikes are not moving at night. So if you can charge all those batteries between 10 or 11 o'clock at night to 5 a.m., by the time she's waking up to start doing her deliveries, all the batteries are ready. So the depleted battery on her bike, she'll go drop it, pick that one, it's faster than fueling, and continue. And that's what we are seeing. And even if you're the other model is charging, there are people who charge their bikes at home. Yeah. So you can charge it and pay for your tokens in your house. So it gives you more flexibility. It's just that it's still at the, I would say we are still starting, we're at the infancy stage. But this is something, if we, I would say, if we put our money where our mouths are, yeah, this is something that's going to spread like wildfire. And I can assure you, Ken here will have a Damascus moment and will cross over.
There is something that I wanted, Latif,
Yes.
My brother
Moses
really to help me to understand. You've seen that bicycle tulikuwa tunaendesha kitambo. It had something like a dynamo pale. Kisimamisha hapo, there was no lights. But the moment it starts moving, it charges itself and there's light all over. Our cars, you move with it the whole day. There's no day you're going to pull that battery and take it for charging. Is there something they can design for this bike so that it just recharges itself? It becomes very easy. Or that is
are you using kinetic energy actually to charge? Because that's the same thing. You, even for the vehicle, that battery at some point, or the hybrid vehicles, it is charging as the vehicle is moving, that battery.
Okay, so let me go where he started. When you had that bicycle that had a dynamo, you were the battery, because you were the one who was, you was using your energy. When you're using a petrol vehicle and it has an alternator to charge the battery, what's running that vehicle is the engine. Yeah. Now this one, you've already got energy stored in the battery. Now, what some bikes have done and vehicles are doing, and especially with the cars and the bigger vehicles, and even some bikes, I'm not sure about this, they have regenerative braking. So when you're like slowing down, the same dynamo effect regenerates and actually charges, but it cannot charge it to 100%. It gives you around 10 to 15% extra. And that's why part of, you find a lot of, and I think you went for some training on the bike. When you then move to electric, there's always some training and some familiarization on how to ride. It also it changes your riding style. If you notice, a lot of the people who are riding electric bikes do not ride them like they stole them. There's a certain discipline, because they've understood, if I ride my bike properly, if I drive my electric car properly, if I drive the electric bus properly, I get more range. But if I'm riding, sometimes your Bodaboda, my colleagues shock me. They spend the whole day sitting there. Then they get a customer, and then they rush him so fast, yeah, to come back and sit. So sometimes you wonder, what is See, just take it easy, and then, and if they would do that, even they would actually ride their bikes more economically. And she was saying, when she rides, she was telling me earlier, when she rides economically, you can get more range. How you ride and how you behave on your bike is a very big thing. Another thing with electric bikes, we can track every single bike. Because the battery is an expensive part. We have to be able to track these batteries. So in these issues of crime, if today a crime is committed with an electric bike, I can tell you, within an hour, I'll tell you which bike was in that area. Because every single bike, we track it. Why do we track it? We're tracking it, one, for safety. 2, for the battery, and 3, because we want to be able to understand how many kilometers did it go, because at a later stage, we will then get into the carbon conversation. The more kilometers we ride using electricity, and remember, our electricity is majority green. So there are very big advantages for using electric compared to...
There's a time government wanted to phase out the 14-seater matatus.
Yes.
And there was a lot of debate about that. Now, the electric bikes are coming and we have our bikes. Now you want all of us to go to electric bike, which is a good thing because you will save money. How do we address the issue of our bikes? Where is it? It's our investment. We put our money into this thing.
I think the difference here is I did not hear the president say he wants to phase them out. I heard him saying we are introducing a new way of doing things with electric bikes. So what will happen? Those bikes, nobody has a 5-year-old bike. Yeah, those bikes, they're few.
My brother Moses, the president doesn't have really to say he's going to phase them out. But let me tell you, change is like a rest. When it comes, it will actually force you whether you like it or not. Because now if the electric bike is a game changer, now you have no any other option
but to switch.
Just to switch.
So the concern here is that you've already made an investment,
yes,
and you've started paying towards this particular bike. You're maybe halfway or whatever percentage into the payment for the bike. Then what happens when the market starts demanding more of this? Where you're left out. So that's what would you like the government to do? Would you like the government to...
The government is the government, and the government does not run out of options. It can actually do whatever that they can do, and actually help these very same people that have invested, because this is a small person that has invested small. Like for instance, I can tell you, some of the creditors Latif in the market, and that is another area where we like to invite the president really to rein in very, very hard. People that have come here, they've invested here, they are not... There are people who have come from other countries who come here. They've really helped our people, yes, but they've just taken advantage of our people.
How?
Give loans to our people. They pay for those same bikes, and there's something my brother Moses have just mentioned about the tracking. You've heard there was a case last year but one, bikes being stolen when they are almost finishing payment. And they were actually on transit on the lorry going all the way to arrested in Isiolo, crossing border to Ethiopia. And that has been the norm with some of these companies. They have people that are working in those companies and trying to completely sabotage what the riders. It's like you empower the rider, but at the same time, you disempower them so that they come and take another loan and they continue. They pay. When they are almost finishing, they are almost with 2 months just to finish. The bike, you parked it outside here at KTN, and when you're actually going to pick your bike, there's no bike anywhere. You've not been given the power really to track the bike in coordination, because there is a loop. There's actually a loophole.
Those who are tracking are the people who lent you the bike?
Yes.
Okay.
Because, like for instance, today if you go and pick a loan with a bank, any of the bank you mentioned, and you buy a car with them, if it is a loan, it's actually written in the same, your name and the name of the bank, so that when you finish, now they transfer the bike to your name. For the motorcycle, it's very different. And if you go and check today, that loan is just written in the name of that company. So when even the bike is stolen, the company, that company is telling you, we are going to investigate and see whether you are going to be paid. When they are paid, they're not going to tell you. And most of our riders have suffered in that very same line. So that is a place and the area where we love and invite the president really to rein in, so that he can actually help us. If at all, he's going also to give us a solution on our petrol bikes, so that as we phase them out pole and embrace the electric bikes also, so that we can also increase the savings that are going to save from petrol or in our pockets. You also look for a solution on these petrol bikes so that we move. But for the manufacturers, like my brother Moses and others that are also going to come into the market, because last year but one, we actually got an experience of electric bikes different from this one that we are seeing here. An electric bike that does not have power. If you just carry one person, because generally, the rules that are governing operation.
Just one person.
One person.
But you want to bring
passenger.
1 billion passenger.
passenger.
And that very 1 billion passenger, like for instance, we actually, nowadays, most of the customers that we carry are women. Because
and they have children.
Someone has been dropped at country bus and they have to commute walk all the way to Anniversary Tower. They have to use a bike because a taxi is also kind of a bit expensive. Now, if you bring a bike that doesn't have power, that's one line. Because we carry passengers, we do delivery, but at the same time, we carry luggage. Those are at Marikiti.
What is the issue?
Yes, even me, I'm
the issue here is I was actually wondering whether this bike can actually carry a gunia, full gunia of waru, because we also carry them. Most of our riders actually doing that. You see,
you have very many questions, and those questions, those are questions that people have actually been raising.
Yes.
Okay, and they're legitimate questions. The issue, though, is, are they just fears of change to a new thing? Or are they born out of experience? You've said, for example, you saw those bikes that came into the market and some of them, the power was insufficient for the rigors of a Kenyan Bodaboda sector. But then, Caroline, do you ever have an issue where there's a load that you can't carry because your battery-powered bike cannot?
No, there's no such issue. In fact, if you'll just see me in Carrefour with the amount of things I get to carry every day, it's a whole lot. So it doesn't have a problem with carrying things. It can carry a lot of... Actually, it has the same power as your bike. I'd actually say it has more power. This one, in a panda mlima kama, as in it's very, and then it's simple to drive. So when you go, una feel it's very simple as you go. You cannot compare it to the petrol bikes, whereby you have to change gear, una change gear, unashika sijui clutch when you want to brake. Now this one is just unaenda tu panda mlima, you just put gear 3 and you just go. Very simple. Also, I can answer your question on the insecurity issue, whereby you say that the bikes get stolen at the end of the wakienda kumaliza kulipa, right? So this bike has an advantage. I'd say you're asking for the solution, switch to electric bikes. The solution is, you see, this bike is tracked, right? Like he said, it has a tracker, there's a cord to it. And you cannot remove the battery by yourself. It has to be uncoded by the system. That's why you go to the swap station, and then they get to uncode, and then they can now remove the battery. So even the battery itself, you cannot remove it by yourself. Also, once they recognize that your bike has been stolen, you report, right? They say that the bike is here and here. What they will do, they will switch off the battery, or they will switch off the account of that battery. Meaning, this person, once he's done with 100 kilometers, he has to go and swap. Where will they swap? The account has already been suspended. So eventually it will not help.
Network imezima.
I hear an issue. You know, with petrol and diesel cars, you go to any petrol station of your choice to top up or to fill up. It doesn't matter. With LPG, after we regulated the regulator and it became a standard universal regulator, you now pick your mtungi, you go and you can decide to switch. You have your regulator, you can have one company's LPG mtungi, tomorrow you can have another one. It sounds like these bikes, if you've taken this particular model of bike, you have to go to their swap stations, you are restricted. So if you've taken a company and this company is only in Nairobi and 4 charging stations, that's it.
That's true. But that's what they call product life cycle.
All right.
All of us had phones. If you had an Alcatel, you had an Alcatel
charger.
But what happened? As product then, the life cycle and you start improving, we will get to a point and very quickly, and we're seeing it happening in the Asian countries. It's already happening in the Taiwans, whereby they're beginning to standardize batteries, or you can have swappable batteries between different companies. Now, if you do that right now, when you're starting an industry in Africa, when you're starting an industry in India, what will happen? You'll stifle innovation. So right now, wacha tuingie kiwanjani, everybody will come with their own different bike. You will choose which one you would require. But as we then move on, what is happening, we are seeing what we're seeing in the Asian world is what they're calling battery consortiums. So you find different OEMs come together and say, we are going to adopt this type of battery. But you can't start there. And that's also happened with, today Type C is the main thing. yeah, for your computer, for your phone, for your tablet. We've now moved
Europe has actually passed laws that
exactly.
standardize the charging.
But if they had started that on day one, they would have actually stifled complete growth. So right now we are at a good point whereby we can compare this bike with the other 30 guys who are in town. And sooner or later, some will merge, some will decide to work together, but we have to do that. Because if we don't do that, we will stifle that, that entire market. And we want that product innovation, because maybe somebody else is going to come with something that is actually more efficient. And so you can't then, if you put a law today saying everybody has a standard battery, then you've killed innovation moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Several
again,
things.
if I go on the vehicle side,
Yeah.
on the vehicle side, that's already beginning to, what have they standardized is the charger, not the battery. It's the charger. So here we assume we are following the European standard, which is CCS2. Yeah. But in China, who's the biggest vehicle market for electric vehicles, they have their own standard. But because they have critical mass, they can actually set their own standard. Until we get critical mass, then we cannot be able to do that without stifling.
There's something about, Latif, about the manufacturing of this bike. This bike right now is imported. I don't think it's Kenyan made. And we'd love really to have a scenario where if it is Kenyan made, it's going to lower the price, because there's hizo mambo ya kusafirisha and all that. It's been done here and becomes very cheaper. I can remember there's one brand of the bikes that when it came here, I don't want to mention, it didn't have a carrier like the one this one has. And we gave a proposal to the company and those that are selling the bikes. We are so much used to another brand of the bike that has a carrier. But we love yours because consumption of this bike is kind of a bit lower. So we've moved to this one, but the challenge is the carrier, because of the luggage that we also carry, this one does not have. Are you willing really to improvise so that you can give us the one carrier that we want for this bike? It actually took a very long time before they actually embraced what you are telling them. Now, there's a dealer who actually took those bikes, came to the market, removed the carrier that comes with that bike,
And customized.
and customized with the one that needed in the market, and they started selling. When the company realized this particular dealer is selling more of these bikes, immediately from the other end in Japan,
They switched.
they switched immediately. Now, I actually have one fear.
It was Japanese.
Actually have one fear. This bike today, there's a bigger possibility if I take it, it's going to give me service. But I have one fear. When the government decide now to give the incentives and remove a particular amount of tax and make it very affordable for the hustlers, the very children of President William Ruto, so that they can see money in their pockets, are they going to compromise the standard of the bikes? Because we have actually seen that in this country. Something starts well, then it's completely degraded to almost a substandard thing.
Okay. Let's start with that one, actually, Moses, because you're in the Electric Association. There are several things. Number one, we'll talk about Kenya Power and what Kenya Power is doing. Let's start with IPRA, what the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority is doing in terms of looking at the infrastructure for charging and whether there are standards being developed there, and then now come to the standards for the vehicles themselves.
Okay. So EPRA, as a regulator, their main job is to look at what the people they regulate provide. So Kenya Power actually put a proposal on a tariff for EV, and it was put to EPRA, and we all participated. I for one, went for public participation. We put in our written. We actually went and defended our positions, and several other companies within the EV ecosystem did that. And so eventually what came out of that is EPRA, as part of their work, as a regulator, approved that EV tariff. Now that EV tariff is implemented by Kenya Power. Now, what has Kenya Power, at least from my dealings with them, what are they committing to? That they said that they have enough power, especially nighttime power, to power all these electric vehicles that we are asking for. So at least that's a commitment to them. Now, from my day job, we are able to put in, we as well, huge amounts of power compared to what our counterparts in Bodaboda ask. And we have been able to get transformers in our charging stations. We've been able to get a very quick response when there's an issue. So at least I can say from the Kenya Power side, they even have an e-mobility task force within and an office on e-mobility to be able to just, because they see this as a new area and as a new growth area. So they're doing their part. On the other side, I think to just allay the fears in terms of localization and actually building these bikes here, I think we need to be candid and say nobody is going to come and put an assembly plant to build 100,000 bikes on day one. You need to put out a few bikes, learn the market, be able to understand what are the nuances of a Kenya. So for example, as you are saying, I know exactly, you gave it away when you said Japan, because there's only one bike in Kenya that comes from, that is sold for Bodaboda that comes from that country, but we'll not mention it. What happens is, you put out a few bikes, you understand what, she will go back. I bet you speak to the company and they ask you, what is it you like, what do you like? And that then develops the bike. So there'll always be part one. Even Windows gives you Windows 1.0 to 1.2, and you keep improving it. Now, when you get to the point whereby there's at least adoption, and that's why we are asking for. Why are we asking the government for 5 years? We're asking for 5 years to be able to grow that critical mass, grow the technical skills required here, and start this assembly. So there's no bike is currently manufactured in Kenya. They are assembled in Kenya. What they do is there are certain parts that are in the current regulations they say must be manufactured here, and some of them are these guards, the back, the carrier, some of the filters. There's 7 parts, and then they're moving to 14. Now, those were for ICE bikes. Some, for example, batteries, your normal lead acid batteries, you're supposed to buy it from Kenya. This bike does not have a lead acid battery. Oil filters, fuel filters, does not have. So to be able to get to the point, and now if you go to those manufacturers who are actually making, for example, the side stands, the steps and all that, and you tell them that, no, my order is only for 300 bikes. It's not economical for them to actually start making specific, because these parts are not interchangeable. You cannot take from a Japanese bike and put on a Chinese. You cannot take from the Chinese and put it on the Indian bike. So they're all different. So we have to get to a point whereby there's a critical mass, and then you are able to localize. And that product life cycle, we are giving it 5 years, and we are phasing it. So we're not saying let's sit and then on year 5, we say we are going to start saying give us these first 2 years to build the market. Then we'll start, these are the parts we want to be able to do locally. For example, like if I speak for 1%, well, these batteries are actually assembled in Rwanda. Now, they've got thousands of bikes in Rwanda. They've got a few hundred here. When they see that the market is accepting their bike, they are willing to start assembly here. We've got another company doing bicycles. They are assembling their batteries in Uganda. If critical mass starts growing here, and what is their biggest challenge is that 22% excise duty on the bicycles. When the critical mass starts, they are willing to move that to Kenya, because Kenya is actually the pearl. Kenya is actually the, it's actually the cherry on the cake. Yeah, that's why and it's, even I would if I
Every
wanted
investor
to test,
wants to at least be
and
within.
if you crack Nairobi, they always say, if Nairobi sneezes, Kenya catches a cold. So the moment we accept it in Nairobi, I can assure you, people will be knocking doors and saying, can I be the distributor in Kisumu? I will even put the charging stations, and that's already happening. I'm seeing it in the bus world, where people are telling me, what does it take for me to actually be your partner in Nakuru, in Naivasha? So what we are hoping from the budget and from the president's promise is that we move this conversation away from Nairobi. Now, if it now becomes a county conversation, you will be able to ride your bike to Dala, because you don't ride in one shot. You will stop in Nakuru. Yeah, it's 150 kilometers, or in Naivasha. As you're having your no, you don't even charge. You'll swap. As you're having a cup of coffee, before you finish your coffee, you'll have swapped your battery. You continue, stop in Kericho. Yeah, you need to take a stretch break. You swap again. You get to Dala.
There's something, Moses, that people have been talking about public really participation on something that you are bringing to us, who are the end consumers.
Yes.
Why did you fix this, come up with a battery that only covers like 80 or 100 kilometers, instead of coming up with a battery that can give us 200 kilometers?
Very simple answer.
Yes.
The bigger the battery, the more expensive and the heavier the bike. you have to trade off. So if I give you a big, I can get you a bigger battery that will do 200 kilometers. You don't need to stop. But when you look, what is the average Bodaboda rider doing? Statistics, very few do over 100 kilometers a day. Very few. Yeah. So majority are within the 80, actually 60 to 100. That's something. But what do they do? Very many short trips. Yeah. Very many short trips. So they're always moving. So they feel like they've done 300, but they've actually only done 100 kilometers. So you always have. And if
it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off.
Final question, Moses.
Yes.
When the president says September, what's the magic with September?
September is a big month for Kenya, and September is a big month for Africa. One, we've got the climate conference before they go to COP. So and this is, I'm speculating, I assume that within that, where Africa is all coming to Kenya to discuss climate. And part of, you cannot discuss climate in Africa without discussing transport and emissions. So I think that is actually why September is a magic, is a time. And it also gives us 3 good months for us.
So it puts it as a marker there.
As a marker there.
By this time, we want to have all the systems in place.
Because Europe, that's what they've been doing. When they go to these meetings, they come with a united front. And hopefully, for the first time, when Africa goes to COP in I think COP 28 or is it 27 in Dubai, they want to, what I've heard the president say, they want to go with a unified position for Africa. And our majority of our emissions in Africa are from transport, public transport.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Just the last one, but not least. Just the last and
this one, the closing.
The closing.
Closing.
I would love to use this platform, Latif, just to urge the president. Those people that came here and gave us a platform, just an app, to use it to do business, but exploiting us using the same app. And we made a lot of noise to NTSA, we made a lot of noise to Ministry of Transport, we made a lot of noise to State House, and there's nobody who's raining on them. Can the president himself take the bull by its horns? You've used these online apps, call it Bolt or wherever, move from here to town. Then they tell you when you end the trip, the customer is being told to pay 80 shillings. 80 shillings, surely? And they want to take 25% of the same 80 shillings back to Europe. Leave me here to pay for fuel, pay for wear and tear and everything, and you still call it pesa mfukoni? Rain on these very apps because they are completely exploiting the very Kenyan public in the name of giving us business. Thank you very much.
You've done the job of a Secretary General advocacy using my platform. Caroline, your closing comment tonight.
Well, I'd say that probably I hope you move to our side of the electric bikes, because this is the solution. The future is electric. This is where we are headed right now. So I don't have any more remarks. This bike is amazing.
We'll close the shot on this particular bike.
Yes.
And we'll see, you'll show us how the bike works.
Okay.
Moses, your closing comment.
It's just, I think we're on the precipice of a new revolution in this country. There's going to be excellent jobs coming into this country, especially for young people. The new mechanic is not going to come with a spanner, he'll come with a laptop. So it's time that we embrace electric EV, and this is the time. This is the time.
Okay, well said. And thank you very much for watching us tonight. Moses Derito is a founder member of the Electric Mobility Association of Kenya. Ken Onyango is the Secretary General of the Bodaboda Association of Kenya. Caroline Garariga is an electric motorcycle rider. And that's what she does for a living. And she says it's basically transformed. She's earning more money than her colleagues who are riding the fuel. Well, no, the diesel or petrol Bodabodas. Asante sana. Let's close on this shot as we see this particular bike.
Caroline is the expert of the bike.
Yeah, let's get to see the battery, because it's a huge thing. But you can't remove it.
No, you can't remove it by yourself. It has to be encoded from this other side.
So you have to take it to the ampersand guys.
Yes, the
for
battery
them
swap
to
station.
Release
Yes.
it,
Yes.
remove the battery and put a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, he was talking about